Be careful when you enter Big Sky Country. You might just encounter some big mysteries. The state of Montana is known for its wide open spaces, beautiful landscapes, and dinosaurs. Beneath all the breathtaking beauty and history lay some very interesting tales. In this episode, I will share with you 2 true Montana paranormal stories submitted by Montana resident Mr. M. If you have spooky, scary, or terrifying paranormal or cryptid tales from Montana or anyplace else, send them to me at bigskymysteries@gmail.com to have me narrate them on this channel. If you like these stories, please hit that subscribe button along with the notification bell so you make sure not to miss a video. And check out my other videos about ghosts, cryptids, alien encounters, and more. Sit back, try to relax, and listen to some true Montana paranormal stories. Late night fishing encounter in eastern Montana, submitted by Mr. M. I grew up on the Fort Peck Indian Reservation in eastern Montana and spent much of my time fishing with friends, especially night fishing. We would often pack up tons of soda, junk food, lanterns, gear, etc., and just head down to the Missouri River close by, or 40 miles up the road to Fort Peck Lake. It was the summer of 2006, and I was 19 at the time and had just moved back after a year in college and had gotten my first apartment by myself. One night, a friend and I decided to go fishing at an old steel bridge that was out of town a few miles. As usual, we got snacks and gear and shot on down the road towards evening. It is probably important to note, too, that we were pretty innocent youths, never drinking or doing drugs of any sort. Our snacks always consisted of soda, candy, or sunflower seeds for the most part. We set up on the side of the bridge less visited by drunks and cast it in. By that time, it was already dark out, and we had the lantern on, and were chatting away and pulling in the occasional fish. Our conversations often found their way to talking about aliens, monsters, ghosts, and the occasional supposed sightings of things in the area from other people. One of the creatures that came up often were the river people, which are like a small, nomadic spirit or fairy of sorts that travels along the rivers and is based in Native American folklore. My friend was Native American and would often talk about some stories his parents or grandma had told him. It said, if you hear whistling by water at night, you were not supposed to whistle back because it was the river people and they would find it offensive and attack you. It was also said that if you left food out, they would take it as an invitation into your home. Probably the most terrifying part was that they were supposedly able to look into your soul and see if you are a good or bad person as you slept. And if you awoke during this time, you would find yourself paralyzed until they moved on. This night was just the same as always, and soon my friend asked in a joking manner, "What if we see glowing red eyes come close to the shore and stare at us from beneath the water?" I laughed and said, "I don't know. Throw it my candy bar and keep on fishing, I guess," or something along those lines. A while later, I look up the river past the large pillars of the bridge and see what appears to be a red light offshore, low over the water. It looks like it could be one of the lights on the front of a boat, which wouldn't be out of the ordinary because there are often people out on their boats fishing at night. Also, on the other side of the bridge is a place to put your boat in, and we had heard people on the other side not terribly long ago. I pointed out to my friend, laughing, and say, "There's your red eyes or eye," and he chuckled about it as well. We went back to fishing and soon hear a vehicle peel out across the dirt road where we thought the boat was close to. A little weird for the vehicle to take off so carelessly in a place where the roads are so bad. But we really didn't give it too much thought. Probably just some stupid drunks taking their chances at driving back into town. Soon, the red light I had pointed out earlier started to make its way out from behind one of the large bridge pillars that was close to us but still out in the water a little way, maybe about 50 feet away or so. My friend and I looked up, expecting to see a boat and do the customary wave to a fellow fisherman. It was a common occurrence that fishermen on boats passing by would ask if we had had any luck, and there would be a small, friendly exchange of words. Except this time, there wasn't a boat. It was just a glowing red orb that came around the pillar, and as it came around, it split into 5 or 6 smaller orbs, and they filed into a single line. They were maybe about the size of a soccer ball, possibly smaller. The orbs started to do an almost playful zigzag pattern, and they all kept a uniform spacing and formation. It was a movement that definitely had intelligence behind it. My friend and I looked at each other, and I whispered in a drawn-out, "What the hell is that?" He shook his head, gobsmacked, muttering back, "I have no idea." He said maybe it's a string of reflectors from something, catching the light off our lantern. So he turned off the lantern, plunging us into darkness except for all of the stars above, and these orbs that kept on glowing as they slowly made their way closer. Soon they were straight out in front of us. What else was strange about these lights was that at first, we couldn't tell if they were above or below the water. They clearly glowed with some energy, but it was like the light didn't go anywhere. Once we realized they were above the water, we still didn't see any reflection on the water. It was like all the light was contained and didn't travel any further than the orbs themselves. What's more is how the land was formed where we were at. There was a kind of backflow of water closer to the shore. So out in the river, it flowed right to left. But closer to the shore, the water swirled back around, and there was a section the water flowed left to right. The orbs were in this section, and they were going against the flow of water. So we knew it was not just some garbage flowing downstream. This was also way before the time of personal drones, of course. Besides, these things were completely silent and flying smoothly along in a tight formation. My friend asked, "What should we do?" I said I wasn't sure. Then I told him he should cast his fishing line at it. He told me to screw myself, and we agreed that was probably not a good idea. About this time, the lights were almost directly straight off the shore in front of us. Maybe 20 feet away now. The red glowing orbs started to fly in a wide circle, still just above or maybe even touching the water. The circle they flew in started to get smaller and smaller, as well as rise up slightly. They started to fly faster and faster until they were almost a ring of light. The circle they flew got smaller and smaller until, poof, they all just vanished. We didn't feel threatened or scared, but you could tell we were both in just disbelief and awe. It was one of the most amazing things I have ever seen in my life, even till this day. We sat in silence for a while, and my friend finally asked what I thought that was, and I said I had no clue. Maybe a UFO? I have no freaking clue. We sat and fished for a few more hours, talking about the thing we had seen before, calling it a night and heading back into town. That night, when I got home to my basement apartment, I took a shower and cleaned up from fishing and jumped in bed. My bed was right under the window, which was probably too small for me to crawl out of if need be. My whole apartment was probably a death trap if a fire ever had broken out. Anyways, my back was to the window as I laid on my right side, and I just got under the blanket when suddenly there was this deafening and jarring buzzing sound, like a drill in my ear, and it sounded like it was getting closer and closer to my ear. I freaked out and tried to look over my shoulder and up at what the sound was coming from, as well as trying to roll or fly out of bed to get away. I found that I was paralyzed and couldn't move, or at least my head and feet felt locked in place. But my midsection felt like I could move it some. What's more is when I went to move my eyes to look up, they would instantly start jerking or almost bouncing back to face forward across the room. I couldn't look towards the window, towards where the sound was coming from. No matter how hard I tried to look up, my eyes would be forced to look away. I tried to roll away, and it was like a rubber band was around me, pulling me back and slowly building more and more tension the harder I tried to roll away or twist my midsection off the bed, when suddenly it was like the rubber band snapped and I popped loose, flying off the bed. At that time, it was morning now, and I grabbed my alarm clock, soaked with sweat, and it was a little more than 6 hours past when I first laid in bed. It was like when I popped out of the grasp of whatever it was, I instantly moved 6 hours ahead, all in one falling motion. I know what sleep paralysis is, and it sounds like it very well could have been that. But what I find strange is that it was the night of seeing those weird red orbs, and I have never experienced anything like it before that night or since. Nothing even close that could be considered sleep paralysis. Also, even till this day, on occasions, that ear has a weird, sharp pain deep down in it from time to time. The best way to describe it is when you get a piercing and that feeling of the needle just as it starts to poke the skin. I haven't had any lost memories come back, nor suffer from nightmares, or anything at all, so I really do not know what happened. When I talked to my friend about my experience at my apartment, he did not really believe me, despite what we saw that night together, and I ended up dropping the matter and not really talking about it anymore after that. As for what we saw, I don't know if it was a UFO or river spirits or what. I wouldn't mind seeing it or something again, as long as we skip the late night visit afterwards. Spooky Experience in School. Submitted by Mr. M. This story requires some backstory, and it isn't the most eventful, but it definitely gave me the creeps when I experienced it. For a time out of high school, I did some custodial work at a school in Wolf Point, Montana. There were many different stories about this school from the other custodians. From contracted workers going in the crawl space below the gym and leaving their equipment below and refusing to go back to get their stuff because of the things they had seen and heard, to custodians finding a large circle filled with kids' handprints under freshly laid wax. No footprints anywhere, and the room was locked down the whole time. It definitely had a creep factor, especially the older sections of the school. We would never want to cross the gym if we didn't have to. The gym and the locker rooms were probably the worst sections. You really felt like something was watching you in these areas, and it would send shivers up your spine. Before I had started working there, though, the custodian that had my area one night went to clean one of the classrooms. As he unlocked it, he was suddenly shocked to find a young girl standing in the dark. She supposedly had old Native American clothing on and said nothing. Thinking, though, that somehow this kid got locked in after school, he asked if she was okay and how she got locked in, and told her that she could not be in there and she had to go home. He took a step into the room, and as he did, the girl walked away from him and vanished before his eyes. Fast forward to when I began to work at this school, and I now had this area to clean. It was getting towards the end of my shift, so it was pretty late at night, and I was cleaning this same room that the other custodian had supposedly seen the girl in. As I cleaned and moved around the room, I suddenly hit my shin off the table on accident, and as soon as I did, I heard a little girl laugh right behind me. I'm surprised my heart did not shoot out of my throat. I was so startled. I whipped around and did not see anything, though. Shivers just shot right through me as I tried to look for an explanation, but couldn't find one. I finished up quickly and locked the room up. So this room also so happened to be the room my mom taught in as well, and I would sometimes visit the classroom and help with projects in the class. The following day of this experience, I went to visit my mom and the kids were lining up for lunch. My mom said to follow the class down and her and I would chat once the kids got dropped off at lunch. The lights were off and the line of kids were about to leave when I noticed the two boys at the end of the line were laughing and waving at something unseen. I asked them what they were up to. Giggling, the boys said something along the lines of, "We're just waving at her. She's funny. She's by the whiteboard. She looks like a ghost." With this, a shiver shot up my spine again, and my head shot over to the board as the line of kids left for lunch, and I was left in the dark, staring at the whiteboard. I didn't see anything, but it definitely felt like something had seen me. Thanks again for joining me for these true Montana paranormal stories. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the subscribe and notification buttons to know when the latest story is delivered. Want to hear your true or fictional scary story narrated by me on this channel? See the description below for how to submit your story. Please consider submitting, especially if it is a true paranormal Montana tale. I'll see you in your nightmares. Good night.